What rights did the people of South Vietnam lose when the North invaded? And what were the South and other countries responsible for during this time?
The Vietnam War, lasting from 1955 to 1975, was fought between Communist North Vietnam and anti-Communist South Vietnam, with lasting effects on Vietnam and its international relations.
The Vietnamese people fought for their independence for decades, from resisting French colonial rule to the rise of communist and anti-communist factions after World War II. The struggle for independence was the heart of the conflict.
Multiple rights were violated. Many responsibilities had to be followed or done during this war.
South Vietnam's rights were violated, such as the right to live in rural areas when bombings took place, and the right to live when U.S. soldiers killed over 400 unarmed civilians in My Lai.
After the North invaded, the South and other countries were responsible for withdrawing all foreign troops and weapons from Vietnam due to the Geneva Accords. They also had to pull French forces south of the DMZ and Communist forces north.
After World War II, Vietnam was led by the French educator Emperor Bao Dai and Ho Chi Minh. Inspired by the Chinese and Soviet communism, created the Viet Minh to fight the Japanese and French rule.
Ho's Viet Minh took Hanoi and formed the Democratic Republic of Vietnam with Ho as president. In response, France backed Emperor Bao and created the State of Vietnam with Saigon as its capital.
Both sides wanted a unified Vietnam. Ho and his supporters wanted a communist nation, while Bao and others wanted close ties to the West.
Tensions between the North and the South grew, and in 1955, anti-communist politician Ngo Dinh Diem became president of the government of the Republic of Vietnam, or DVN, or South Vietnam, after removing Emperor Bao.
In 1955, President Dwight D. Eisenhower strongly supported Diem and South Vietnam. By 1957, the Viet Cong and opponents of Diem's regime began attacking government officials.
During the Vietnam War, the U.S. believed in the domino theory, which suggested that if one Southeast Asian country became communist, others would follow.
This persuaded Lyndon B. Johnson, the President of the U.S., to further increase U.S. military and economic support.
In August 1964, after North Vietnamese boats attacked U.S. ships, President Johnson ordered bombing raids on North Vietnam. Congress granted him more war powers, and U.S. planes began regular bombings.
Starting from March 1965, Johnson sent multiple U.S. combat forces into battle in Vietnam.
By 1966, large parts of South Vietnam were heavily bombed and uninhabitable, becoming free fire zones where only enemies remained.
The DRV and Viet Cong continued fighting, receiving reinforcements and supplies through the Ho Chi Minh Trail via Cambodia and Laos.
In the war, there were protests against the Vietnam War. People argued that civilians were the main victims and that the U.S. was supporting corrupt dictatorships in Saigon.
On January 31, 1968, General Vo Nguyen Giap's forces launched the Tet Offensive, attacking over 100 cities in South Vietnam. Despite the U.S. and South Vietnamese forces fighting back, the offensive shocked the American public.
In March 1968, President Johnson's speech was well received in Hanoi, starting peace talks between the U.S. and North Vietnam in Paris in May.
Thinking otherwise.
To limit the number of American casualties, Nixon announced the program Vietnamization.
We Americanized the war in Vietnam. In this administration, we are Vietnamizing the search for peace.
The U.S. withdrew troops, increased air and artillery attacks, and provided South Vietnam with training and weapons to handle the ground war.
On March of 1968, 400 civilians in the village of My Lai were slaughtered by U.S. soldiers, which further continued anti-war protests.
On November 15, 1969, 250,000 Americans participated in the largest anti-war protest in U.S. history, calling for the withdrawal of American troops from Vietnam.
The anti-war movement split Americans into two groups: those who saw the war as an abuse of power and those who viewed opposing the government as unpatriotic.
In January 1973, the US and North Vietnam reached a peace agreement that ended US involvement, but the war between North and South Vietnam continued.
After the US withdrew, South Vietnam couldn't resist the North. On April 30th, 1975, North Vietnamese forces captured Saigon and renamed it Ho Chi Minh City.
During the Vietnam War, many people's rights were violated, while others were expected to be responsible for what they are supposed to do.
First are South Vietnam rights that got violated when the North invaded.
Initially, the people of South Vietnam had basic rights, including the right to live, safety, and protection from unjust treatment.
After the North invaded, they violated rights by attacking civilians, forcing relocations, and suppressing political freedoms, using violence against supporters of the South Vietnamese government.
The North tightly controlled captured areas, sending many people to re-education camps or executing those who opposed the communist regime.
During the war, bombings destroyed many homes, violating the right to live in country villages. Additionally, when the U.S. soldiers killed over 400 civilians in My Lai, the right to live was violated.
After rights are things that the South and other countries were responsible for after the invasion of the North.
Political leaders in the U.S. were responsible for making decisions on military action, diplomacy, and relations with allies and South Vietnam, as well as keeping the American public informed about the war's goals and progress.
South Vietnamese soldiers were responsible for defending their country from communist forces, while civilians supported the U.S. effort by providing logistics, intelligence, and resisting the Viet Cong.
So in conclusion, from 1945, after the North invasion, the people of South Vietnam faced rights violations, including the right to live in rural areas, the right to live, safety, and freedom from unjust treatment.
They were also expected to be responsible in doing what they were required to do.
Never to come back. I see people turn their heads and quickly look away.
Hi!
I'm Lydia Fazina.
I'm Jasmine Hernandez.
And I'm Abril Manessi. And thank you for watching our documentary.
We would like to give a special thanks to our social studies teacher, Coach Cloud, for helping us be more productive.
And our families for letting us meet up with each other.
And thank you for watching
A Homeland Divided, South Vietnam's Fight for Freedom.